Hi everyone, this is Professor Benjamin, and usually at the end of each week, either by Friday or by Monday, I've sent out a roundup like this. So sometimes it's audio, sometimes it's a written roundup, but will recap what happened last week and then give you some pointers for the weeks ahead. So this week was great. It was an introduction post. I got to know a little bit more about you guys, just about your writing skills, about how you cite sources. Most of you did a fantastic job. Some of you failed to meet the requirements for the initial and response post, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that you probably just didn't have a chance to read the directions for initial posts and response posts. Those directions right here I'm going to show you can be found right here under the course information session. So how to make an initial post, how to make a response post. Here's videos and all the sources that you need in order to help you meet the requirements for this course. So this week we had one assignment due, which was the introduction. You answered the forum post, and the forum post was due, the initial post and response post were due by Thursday because the course started on a Tuesday. You'll also have a quiz due by Sunday, February 19th by 11:59, and that's on the first chapter of textbook. If you haven't had a chance to get the textbook, you can always use the PowerPoint, which is here, to help you. I do know that two of the little animated features aren't working on the PowerPoint, but if you listen to this podcast from NPR, you'll actually hear them at the very end talk about positive feedback loops. So it'll help give you a little bit of information. This week coming up, we have a lot more work to do. Remember the first, from week 2, 3, 4, and 5, we're going to cover 2 chapters a week, 2 sessions a week. And the reason for that is this is a 10-week course, and so it starts 4 weeks later than the 15-week classes. So we need to actually cover that material. We can't just remove those learning outcomes. We have to cover that material, but it's just in a condensed period of time. So over the next couple weeks, you're going to really need to buckle down in this course in order to meet the requirements. So this week, we're going to cover Tragedy of the Commons, and we're also going to cover ethics, economics, and policy. So we're going to cover session 2 and session 3. What this means is that by Tuesday, 11:59 of this week, remember, initial posts in this class are due by Tuesday, response posts are due by Thursday. The reason that last week both items were due on the same day had to do with the fact that we started the class on a Tuesday. So I couldn't technically have something due that night. So Tuesday by 11:59, you have an initial post due for Tragedy of the Commons. You also have an initial post due for ethics, economics, and policy. And then you also have a response post to a fellow classmate, one for Tragedy of the Commons and one for economics and policy. So you have 2 initial posts due, 2 response posts due, okay? And you also have a quiz due by next Sunday. So only one quiz due by next Sunday, and that's the Ethics, Economics, and Policy quiz. Tragedy of the Commons does not have a quiz because there's no technical chapter in the textbook related to Tragedy of the Commons. It's more of the article by Garrett Hardin that speaks about Tragedy of the Commons. So real quick, I just want to talk a little bit about Tragedy of the Commons. And so this is a shared resource. So anything that we share, and a lot of this has to do with resources, so air, water, any resource that's non-renewable that we all share as a human population. And what happens is that we're into this tragedy. We're catch ourselves in a tragedy because we have an inherent need for greed. The human race has that inherent need for greed, so we look for our short-term gain of that resource rather than looking at the long-term interests of it. So we look for a utilitarian ideal, which is what's the best for this generation and don't worry about future generations. And so that is the big issue with it. So this article by Garrett Hardin, it looks complex, but when you start reading the article, you'll see he specifically talks about under Tragedy of the Commons why he's writing the article, and he talks about the pasture scenario that William Foster Lloyd proposed, and you can reference him in the PowerPoint. And he talks about all of the technical solutions that we have proposed. We've proposed mutual corrosion. We've proposed welfare state. We proposed privatization. We proposed all of these different ways that we could solve the commons problem. But the issue is that what Hardin always talks about is that we need an extension in morality, is that these technical solutions won't work alone. We need rather this extension in the fact that we need education, or we need to somehow get people to think morally about the fact that if what I'm using today is going to hurt other people in the future, or other species, or the resources in the future. Okay, so we talk about that. I also talk about invasive species. Remember, an invasive species is not a tragedy of the commons if nature enacts the species into that location. So for example, if a bird picks up a seed and carries it to another location, and it's an invasive species. When it is a tragedy of the commons when humans decide to bring a species in from another area for their short-term gain. So, hey, this flower is really pretty. I'm in Jamaica and I think this flower looks beautiful, so I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to carry it to the United States. I'm going to plant it in my yard. But little do we know it's an invasive species. And the reason it's a tragedy is because I'm thinking about myself. I'm thinking about my own short-term gain rather than the long-term interests of the area around me. So these are what we'll cover this week. So you're going to pick one of the 6 questions that has been asked and you're going to answer it. Remember, only 6 people can answer each question. So if you really like a question, you should get in early and answer the question. Okay? Once 6 people have answered the question, you need to answer a different question. So it's in your best interest to log in before Tuesday and answer one of the questions. There's no question saving, and I noticed that a lot in your initial posts. People would make blank posts, or they put a period in just because they wanted to see what other people wrote. I don't take kind to that, I would say. I'm just really not into that kind of behavior, especially at the college level. So if you are answering a question and you're the 7th person to answer it, you're going to get a 0. So make sure you get in early. There's no question saving. So don't post the question and then come back later and answer it. That's not how we play in this course, okay? Maybe other courses have handled it that way, but I believe in strict policies. So you have your initial post due by Tuesday, 11:59 for Tragedy of the Commons. You have a response post to a fellow classmate by Thursday, 11:59 next week. You also have Ethics, Economics, and Policy. So this is chapter 2 in your textbook, and you'll have an initial post due for this and a response post due by this. So initial post due by Tuesday, response post due by Tuesday. By next Sunday, you have a quiz due. So you'll see all of the material here. This is a fantastic chapter 2. It's a lot of information, but unfortunately, remember this is a condensed semester. So we talk about environmental injustice. It used to be that environmental injustice only dealt with race, but now it's gender. And a lot of the reasons that it has to do why it occurs, I might say, is because of lack of education, lack of income of these people, lack of political fight. So there's a lot of things there. We'll talk about cap and trade. Here's a wonderful short video that teaches you what cap and trade is. And it's a really helpful video to give you a sense of that. Also, this Pricing the Priceless article is what we do. We call them cost-benefit analysis. So it's how we decide what policies we're going to enact. So how do we decide what pollutants we're going to regulate? And how do we decide how low those standards are going to be, or what the limit of pollution is going to be? Well, we do that through what we call a cost-benefit analysis. So we create this document and we show all the pros and cons to it, and we decide what's the best level. Remember, it's what's best for the most people at the cheapest price. So there are going to be people who die from pollution, and unfortunately CBAs, that's not why they're enacted. They're enacted because we want to be able to get the most bang for our buck. And so this article will talk about the problems, the fundamental flaws, the practical flaws, alternatives to cost-benefit analysis. So it is a lot that you have to do this week, and for the next couple weeks it's going to be a lot. You're going to hear me say that, but I think with good time management skills you can handle all of this work. And remember, this is an online class, so technically those 3 or 4 hours that we're meeting in the classroom a week, you're not doing that. So if you just spend 3 or 4 hours working on this, you definitely can write out forum posts. And don't forget, usually in other classes you have work due at night. So, you know, those extra 2 or 3 hours a week are what you would normally put into a normal class. So you want to make sure that you don't forget that this is an online class, and technically if we were meeting, we would be meeting in the classroom and you would have work due, etc. All right, so a lot of you did a great job on your forum posts. I'm really looking forward to this week's forum posts. Both of them, remember, you have 2 initial posts due, 2 response posts due, you have a quiz due. All right, so have a fantastic week. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and I'm looking forward to your posts this week.